So the Yasen is a Russian SSGN guided missile nuclear submarine, and it is the most modern attack submarine in the Russian Navy right now. It is known as Project 885, and they've built a number of these. They have 4 in service right now with 4 under construction. They intend on building 12. The primary mission of this submarine is to escort and sanitize an area around the deployed nuclear submarines, those being the Bory class and the Delta class of SSBNs. She can carry a wider range of weapons, including Kalibr cruise missiles, Oniks anti-ship cruise missiles, even the hypersonic Zirkcon cruise missiles in VLS tubes. She also has a large number of torpedo tubes that we'll go over today. This is a very formidable, modern, 21st century attack submarine, and it is the most potent attack submarine in the Russian Navy. Let's begin with some of the weapon systems on board. They shoot the Type 53 and 71 series of torpedoes out the bow. They do have 10 torpedo tubes on the Yasen modernized class. Topside in the sail for self-defense, they will have a man with a man-pad shoulder-mounted surface-to-air missile. Has about a 6-kilometer range maximum and is simply used for air defense as they transit in and out of port. It is not permanently fixed. It's literally a sailor with a portable shoulder-launched surface-to-air missile. And behind the sail, we have the 8 VLS cells, each with 4 tubes for a total of 32 VLS cells. Each one of those will carry only one weapon, but the weapon could be the Oniks, the Kalibr, or the Zirkcon, and we'll go over those in detail. The sensors are quite extensive here. Starting on the bow is the MGK 600 sonar system. It is the most advanced, modern submarine sonar system in the Russian Navy. It is very capable. It is extremely large array that we'll go over in a little bit of detail. And while Russian beamforming does lack that of the West and NATO countries, they have made significant steps in the last 20 to 25 years to close that beamforming software gap, meaning that as they process the sound coming through their sonar systems, they get much clearer audio and with that detectability. Up in the sail, we have all of the usual sensors that you would expect. Attack periscopes, radar complexes that do multiple jobs that we'll go over, a search periscope that has a wider field of view, but is more likely to be detected by a submarine periscope radar. And then behind that are all the whip antennas, including a satellite communication antenna. Out of the rudder at the top, you'll see it looks like it has a little tube on the back. That is for the towed sonar array. It is pushed outside that tube. It is normally stored in the ballast tanks aft and is pushed out after she is submerged. That is called shark tail. Here's the mast arrangement, and I want to say thank you and credit to Richard Stern, who does fantastic sail drawings of submarines that are very accurate, and he has shared these with us multiple times. You can follow him on Twitter. I recommend you do. So this is for the Yasen modernized. The PZNS attack periscope is all the way up at the front. That is what they're going to use, obviously, during an attack, or if they want to do an observation while at periscope depth without being detected, they would use this periscope versus the search periscope. This one has a much smaller head that sticks out of the water. It can still be detected, but it would take a little bit longer for a periscope radar to light up on this head compared to number 3, the other red periscope you see in the picture, which is the Paris 98 UP search periscope. During normal operations, they would use the Paris 98 periscope because that has the widest field of view. It is the safest to use, and it has a little ESM sensor on top to let them know if they're being detected or not. Between those two is what's called a radar complex. This is the R43 modernized, or R43M, and it is a number of different ESM and radar sensors all in one. Behind the periscopes and that radar complex is the first satellite navigation mast. And this is used for all sorts of navigational aids and communication with satellites. Behind that is the whip antenna that does high frequency and VHF radio communication. And then finally behind that in its own separate enclosure is the 3Ts 30 0M banknot. And that is a satellite communication dish inside of that little shelter there that protects it. And that's where they'll do their primary communications. That can send a lot of data very fast. So if they have a lot of message traffic to catch up on, that would be their primary means of communication. The Yasen-M class is made in Sevmash shipyard. So it's one shipyard in the White Sea that we'll show you here in a second. Hull 1 is the Severnensk, and it is the only one that is not modernized. This lecture is going to focus on the modernized submarines because these are the ones that are most formidable and are going to sea now. The Kazan is making regular deployments into the Atlantic now. She most recently visited Cuba, where the United States Navy was able to get a very good profile of her. So we now have a lot of additional data on her. Unfortunately for us, that is still sensitive. The U.S. Navy is not sharing all the data that we collected, as expected. But they do have 4 at sea, and they're building 4 more right now. The next couple that are being commissioned are all going to the Pacific. It's like the next 3. They're going to focus, Russia's focusing on Vladivostok and Pacific Fleet for the next batch of Yasens that are being constructed right now. And eventually there will be 12. Here's the Sevmash shipyard. This is the only shipyard that makes the submarine. It is a very large shipyard with multiple assembly bays and 2 very large assembly buildings that you see here, the blue one on the left and the brown one on the right. This shipyard is often featured in a show called RT, or Russia Today, and they often brag or showcase, I should say, about their submarines and their construction going on in this shipyard. Since the Ukraine war started, I haven't seen that show. I don't know if it's still on the air, but if you can find old episodes on YouTube of Russia Today, I would definitely look up their Bori and their Yasen videos. They're very interesting. If you can see past the propaganda, just look at the facilities and you'll see that this is a modern shipyard. And it does arguably the best construction of nuclear submarines in the Russian Navy. It's located in northern Russia on the White Sea, very close to the Kola Peninsula, where many of their submarine bases and naval bases in general are located. So the Yasen modernized by the numbers. It is a nuclear-powered submarine with a KTP-6 nuclear reactor that turns one shaft that is connected to a pump jet. So she doesn't have a screw per se. She has a pump jet propulsion. She displaces almost 14,000 tons when fully submerged. This is a very large submarine, almost twice the displacement, just a little bit under twice the displacement of a 688. Very big, and because of that, her top speed is only 28 knots. This makes her very susceptible to torpedo attack. If you can just get the torpedo close enough, she won't be able to outrun most modern torpedoes. It just becomes a question of range at that point. 28 knots, top speed. Publicly, Russia claims to have a 20-knot surface speed. This is extremely high for any submarine, but that is the public number, so we're going with that. 20 knots on the surface. She does have 4 missiles and 8 VLS cells carrying the Kalibr, the Oniks, and the Zirkcon cruise missiles. I will break those down in a second. She does have 10 53-centimeter torpedo tubes on the bow, and those can shoot multiple types of 53-centimeter torpedoes. Primarily, she shoots the Test 71 and all the Type 53 series of torpedoes, of which there are many of them. The MGK 600 series is the Sonar suite, which includes the towed array, the high-frequency active array, and the low-frequency active on the bow array. It is a complete suite of sonar arrays. The Granite Electron is the R-43 radar and ESM combination, all in one package. She has the Paris 98 Optotronics mast, which means it's just a video camera going up above the waterline. It's not an actual mirrored periscope. The towed array is called Shark Tail, and her attack periscope is the PZNS-10, and the search scope is the Paris 98. Here is the OK-650 nuclear-style reactor. These can generate up to 200 megawatts. Uses approximately 20 to 45% enriched uranium-235. Nuclear propulsion gives this submarine unlimited range as long as they have food on board for the crew. They don't need to come up for air because they can generate their own, including their own water, and they continuously filter the existing air that they have. They also have high pressure air banks to bleed in oxygen if they need to replenish oxygen at any time, and there is an oxygen generator on board. So they don't even need to rely on the oxygen banks. Those can simply be and are a backup to the oxygen generator. Now, this design goes all the way back to the 1970s, but this being the modernized, it has been redesigned, if you will, over the past 10 to 15 years with 21st century technology. But technically the Yasen class, and this includes the Severnensk, the one that is not modernized, Hull 1, began its development in the 1970s. So here is the sonar suite. It is an incredible piece of technology. It's very advanced, very comparable to even our Virginia class in terms of array size and number of sonar elements. This does not mean it's as good because there's a lot more to sonar than just the number of hydrophones you have. But they certainly have packed a lot of hydrophones on the sonar, and that does help make it better. When it comes to sonar, arrays, size, and number of elements is critical, and they've packed as many as they can in here. They have the equivalent of a large bow array and a flank array on the bow of this submarine. And flank arrays, often called wide aperture arrays in the American Navy, are very sensitive, and when you have more than one, they're very accurate. Now, we only know of one on the port side, one on the starboard side, so they don't have the same configuration as we have, but the flank array by itself is very good. Of course, whenever they have the shark tail out, we believe that they have the signaling processing capability to combine the beams of the bow, the flank array, and the towed array into one large, long sensor. That is a key technological development that they should have by now. Russia should have this, and it gives them much extended range and frequency flexibility, giving them a wide option to the sonar operator to search for high and low frequencies for a very long range, depending on environment. So I want to reiterate that this is a very good sonar system. You will not be sneaking up on this submarine unless you're extremely quiet and the environment you're in is noisy. You're going to need both of those things. So the estimated range is going to be 74 kilometers for active sonar. That has more to do with the active mode than the actual propagation path. With the towed array out, we estimate they can hear out to approximately 130 kilometers. This public information is in line with the public information of the American 688 detection range. I would only caution the listeners to know that sonar ranges are extremely dependent on environment, much more so than even radar ranges are. It's a very different calculation when you're doing sonar. Okay, let's move back to the radar complex. This is really cool. They combined radar and DSM into one mast, one device called the R43M complex. And this is on the Yasen and the Yasen modernized and the Bori class submarines. It's used as a navigation radar when on the surface and an ESM module. ESM is passive detection of radar emissions, and it replaced the Radion U, which is the previous system. The Paris 98 Optotronics mast is controlled with this console here. It is a camera on a stick that is hydraulically lifted out of the submarine. It does not penetrate the pressure hull, which is key here. So if something happens and they collide with, say, a ship as an example, and it rips it off, it doesn't punch a hole in the boat as a normal periscope would. There is no penetration in the hull other than the cable that connects it to the actual lifting mechanism that pushes the camera above the waterline. This camera has both television and thermal imaging. The field of view goes out to 32 degrees. The range is down to 12 micrometers, and it is integrated with an ESM system working in tandem with the Optotronics. The ESM is the little hub on the top of that thing. And you see the two different lenses. One's a TV camera and one is a thermal imaging camera. Here's the MG rather 104 Borst. This is a countermeasure. This is a 53 centimeter countermeasure that they shoot out of the torpedo tube. These countermeasures can last for up to an hour. They're very long in duration. And the idea here is it can sound like a noisy submarine. I've heard these myself. They are basically recordings or simulations of recordings of their own subs that they do themselves on their own sound trials. And so you could have a contact with the same sonar signature diverge in two different directions. And it is up to the operator and the AI now of the American sonar system to figure out which one is right. A good sonar operator will be able to tell. I cannot speak to the sonar operators today because I'm sure this technology has gotten better. But during the Cold War, or the end of the Cold War when I was in, we could tell the difference if we looked hard enough. But it's a whole new world now in the 2020s. It is the same device, but I'm sure the insides are improved. Just know that this is a torpedo tube launched decoy. They also shoot torpedoes, obviously, out of the torpedo tubes. This is the Type 53 torpedo. There are multiple configurations of this, too many to list in one lecture. It would be its own lecture, Type 53 torpedoes, and that might be one we do in the future. But just know that, generally speaking, these do 55 knots, and if they're thermal, which means gas-powered, thermal powered. Their warhead is about 300 kilograms of high explosive. There are wake-homing torpedoes that are 53 centimeter, but most of them are acoustically guided. They all are wire guided pretty much, pretty fast and capable. Especially if it's wake-homing. If you're a surface ship and you have a wake-homing torpedo on you, the only thing you can really do is run away from it because it won't see any decoys. It won't see the Nixie. The wake-homing only sees a wake. And once it's on your wake, it's coming for you. You just got to outrun it, which is what makes the wake-homing torpedo so effective. Even if the torpedo never makes it to your ship, you've just spent the last 45 to 60 minutes running from it instead of staying in formation with the fleet. It takes your ship out of the fight, or it puts you in a different position in the fight than what you would normally want to be. So that's some of the ways these wake-homing torpedoes will work. Typically speaking, and this is not on the submarine, a larger torpedo called the 65 centimeter torpedoes, many of those are wake-homing, and those can last for much more than 1 hour. But the wake-homing 53 centimeter, it's still going to be a long run, and the only thing you can do as a surface ship is run away from it or destroy the torpedo. There are some countermeasures today in the 21st century built by Germany, Israel, and the United States that do a hard kill on torpedoes. So you could do that, I suppose. All right, Test 71 torpedo. This is manufactured by Gidroper, and pardon me for butchering that name, but it's my best I can do with this. These are a little bit slower, 40 knots, but they run longer, out to 20 kilometers. The warhead is only 20 kilograms of HE, which is still enough to blow a big hole in your submarine. But these are used for harder targets to kill. You know, they would shoot this before they would shoot the Type 53, in my opinion, because this is an electric torpedo. It's faster to start up. It's a little bit quieter. Not that that matters that much. You'd still hear it coming. And it's got enough of a warhead to run you down. You know, you just got to make sure you outrun that thing. The good thing is about most of our submarines and ships can get close to between 30 and 40 knots in that gap. And so the closure rate of this weapon would be relatively slow. So unless they were right on top of you, you could probably outrun this weapon without any decoys. So, but again, you'd be running for 45 minutes. All right, the man pads. This is crazy, but the Russians do this for real. Americans would never trust an enlisted man with this thing. This is a shoulder-launched portable surface-to-air missile. Goes out to about 6 kilometers, shoots down helicopters and low-flying aircraft. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. The NATO name for this is the SA-24, and it's just used to defend the submarine as they transit out of port and back into port. Anytime they're on the surface, there will be a designated watchstander with this, nearby, not necessarily on his shoulder, but nearby, and he'll have it ready to go if he needs it. It's a dual wave infrared seeker, very small warhead, 2.5 kilogram fragmentation, but it's enough to damage a helicopter enough to put it back in the water. So yeah, so Russia operates man pads from the sail with an enlisted man on the surface. All right, the Kalibr land attack cruise missile. This is a battle-tested and proven cruise missile, very long range. When I was in the Navy, we called it the Tomahawk ski because it's very similar to the Tomahawk in performance. The NATO name is SSN-30 Alpha. It does have the rocket propulsion in the final stage, pushes it very fast into the target. It has a 400 kilogram blast fragmentation, high explosive warhead, active RF seeker is on the front, and it can be launched from the VLS and the torpedo tubes because it is 53 centimeters in diameter. It's the same diameter as the torpedo, and it's not too long to fit, so they can put them in the torpedo tubes as well. When you combine that with 10 torpedo tubes and the 32 VLS behind the sail, that's a lot of weapons. All right, let's move on to the Oniks P-800. The P-800 is a supersonic anti-ship cruise missile. The NATO name is SSN-26, the Strobel. It is ramjet propulsion with a 200 kilogram high explosive warhead, or a SAP warhead, which has a little bit higher of a warhead size. It is both active and passive seeker. We don't know much about these seekers of the Oniks or the Zirkcon, to be honest with you, but this is what we believe that they have, is they have home on jam capability. Or even if you don't jam it, if you have a radar active on your target, it can home in on that as well. The max speed is Mach 2.2. It has a range of about 300 kilometers, and it has multiple profiles in terms of altitude, being 14,000 meters is high, 10 to 15 meters is low, and minimum sea skimming is 5 meters off the water. This is the Zirkcon cruise missile. This is Russia's hypersonic scramjet propulsion cruise missile. NATO designation SSN-33. This does have a conventional warhead option and also can carry a nuclear warhead. This uses internal navigation and GLONASS guidance, which is the Russian version of GPS. It has both active and passive RF seekers. We're not able to confirm either one of these, and I'll tell you why. There has been one test of this missile against a ship that it's been made public. And in that video, this missile does achieve hypersonic speeds and hits an anchored ship, an anchored target ship off the shore of Russia near the White Sea. The ship is not moving. So it is not clear if this missile was simply pre-programmed to go to that point and explode and hit the target, or if it actually does have a seeker and hit the target or organically. That's not clear. Russia, of course, claims they have active and passive seekers on the nose of this missile. It can be, of course, used against land targets as well, but they have demonstrated the ability to hit a ship during a naval exercise. All right, final thoughts. Yasen modernized, very good submarine. Just because it's Russian and right now the reputation is not great, don't discount this one as being not a good submarine. They put a lot of time, money, effort, technology into this, including training the crew. I don't expect their submarine force to perform as poorly as their surface navy, with all the extra effort they put into keeping a ballistic missile submarine at sea at full times, and they depend on these to escort those, sanitize the area around them. What they've commonly done is they'll send out one of these before the bore even gets underway to kind of clear the area in the direction normally north of the Kola Peninsula towards the polar ice cap region. And this submarine will do a ladder left and right search, sanitizing a very large area of water. And of course, we're watching them do this, is the irony of this. Anyway, so once that large area of water is cleared in their opinion, it'll come back and there will be some form of communication underwater with the Bory submarine or the Delta, because remember, they still operate the Delta ballistic missile submarines. This underwater communication sounds like static, and sometimes it sounds like musical tones too. Beep, beep, beep. Anyway, so it's all encoded, but those codes mean things like, you're ready to go, comrade, get on station or whatever. And so then the Bory goes on station into the area that the Yasen had just cleared. And what the Yasen will do is go behind the Bori to see if anyone's following her. And of course, we're not dumb enough to get caught doing that. And we'll watch the Yasen do that. Now, sometimes the Yasen will stay in the area for over a week, just hanging out, making sure Bori's okay. But usually not for the entire deployment. Haven't seen that at all. So this hull is an example of modern Russian design. It is very capable, but the more she goes to sea, the more information we get on her. She is capable of launching the Zirkcon hypersonic missiles. That is a very real capability. There are still some questions in my mind as to how capable the Zirkcon is at hitting a moving defensive warship. It's certainly going to be harder than hitting an anchored one during a war game. But again, her primary role is to keep the ballistic missiles sanitized and safe, keep the American NATO submarines away from the Deltas and the Boris. Primary mission. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this subbrief. I've given a lot of new details in this, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening, everybody.